Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very somber episode of Slumber Party. It's with a heavy heart that I inform you that Nick, aka Little Nick, has been hit by the Slumber Party curse. He was back home in Portland visiting family at a Denny's, and he tried to climb into a wheelchair. I was gonna say he tried to climb into a high chair. Can I not get anything right? How is it even when I'm by myself I can this up? You know, usually I can blame Little Nick and Boss Baby Hooch, and instead we're gonna have to beep out I can't even talk. You know, it becomes more and more apparent why I need other people on a podcast. Too bad everybody's afraid of me right now. People are getting canceled left and right. I feel fine though. You know, that's the worst part about all of this is people around me are dropping like flies. Like their careers are really taking a dive. But, you know, I stay fine. Like nothing has really happened. And it's kind of hard for anything to affect me anyway, because I really don't care about anything. And this has been a good test for people to really find that out. Because what people don't understand is that most people, even though I've burnt a couple bridges here and there, most people that are familiar with me know that this is kind of business as usual, which may sound bad, but it's not my fault. There's a lot of people pulling a lot of stupid stuff in the different cities I go to. That is not my fault. I'm not the one that makes it like that. I just get there, I spot the problem, I call it out. Some people get mad. Those tend to be people that feel like they're in positions of authority, but I just refuse to accept there are any real authorities. I don't know why people think that they're in that position in the first place, and I hate to be the one to burst their bubbles. Really, I don't hate it. I don't mind being the one to burst their bubbles, and that's why I do what I do. So then I just start talking, and in a lot of cases, I don't even realize that anybody's feelings are going to get hurt. Like, to tell you the truth, to be 100% honest, when it comes to my situation with Mothership and Sarah Weinshank and Kim Congdon feeling any kind of way about me saying that they don't do well at the Mothership, I really thought they knew that they weren't doing well at the Mothership. And maybe that's just because I'm a little more self-aware than the average comedian. But the truth is, there's a room here in Austin. It's called the Alamo Draft House, and there's a show there. Well, there's been a couple of shows there, but the current show there is Nat and Chris that run that show. And for some reason, even though almost everywhere I go, I kill it, I just do not have good odds of killing it in that room. And it's unfortunate because it's me that I'm having to talk about this way right now. But the fact of the matter is, I do not consistently do well in that room. Have I ever had a good set in that room? Yes. Have I ever had a great set in that room? Yes. But most of the time, my set is going to be mid to below average. And when I say below average, a lot of times the young comics here on the scene or in any scene I go to will be like, you always kill it. And I'm always very honest with them about that. I always tell everybody, yes, I do really well most of the time. But when I bomb, I bomb. And I don't think people really understand that. I've been compared to a Russian gymnast before when it comes to stand-up. And that may sound like I'm joking, but it's 100% true because I do take big risk. Like when I'm on stage, a lot of my stuff does start out, even the best stuff, even the strongest stuff, starts out with me bombing, because it is so out there. And then I have to get to a point where I just don't care about people's feelings about the words that I'm saying, and I don't care about my own feelings about the words that I'm saying. But for some reason, to get back to the point, when it comes to this room, the Alamo Draft House, I do not do well there. So if I ended up hearing that Nat Robichevsky and Chris, who are the host of that show, were telling people either on a podcast or in real life that I don't do well in that room, that would not bother me. I would honestly just be like, yeah, I don't know why that is either. But for some reason, I don't consistently do well in that room. And then nobody can ever come at me and say, but you're always trying to get booked there. I don't try to get booked anywhere, to tell you the truth. Like, I am a comic that lets people come to me. If you want to hit me up and see if I want to do your show, there's a good chance if I'm available on that night and it's close enough that it's not going to get on my nerves, I will do your show. But I'm not hitting people up actively and being like, hey, can I be on your show? I'm not one of those people. One, because I don't feel like I should have to be. And two, because I don't always feel like it's fair. Because I feel like if I ask people to do their show, they might feel a little intimidated into having me on their show. So I just let people come to me. If you want to have me on your show, then hit me up about it. But outside of that, I'm not bugging people about their shows. Also, when it comes to my show, which is here at the Creek and the Cave, catch it while you can, because who knows what I'm going to say next. You never know when one day the Creek is going to be like, look, Ty, you finally burnt the right bridge, and now we can't have your show anymore. And I'll be like, look, you guys, it wasn't making money anyway. We all know the numbers on this show. I don't think anybody's heart is breaking right now, is what I'm saying. Is it a fun show? Yes. Do I love doing it? Most definitely. But at the same time, I'm not going to act like, what will I do? It's like, I'll find something else to do Wednesday nights at 10 p.m., which is when my show happens. Every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. here at the Creek and the Cave. Also, just so everybody knows, none of my opinions are a reflection of the way anybody feels here at the Creek and the Cave. So do not come at them and be like, hey, Ty was saying this on the podcast. Basically, they just let me use the space. Producer Justin is nice enough to sit in and make sure that everything's running right, because if I had to do this myself, it would be with my phone at home like I usually do it. And sometimes it's nice to have a change of pace. I also want to continue to do a podcast. And I told Hooch that when he comes back, if he wants to be on the podcast, he can definitely still be on the podcast. But I've also been very honest with somebody, which you saw in the last episode, if you watched the last episode. If not, I'll put it on the end card of this episode here. But don't go skip to it now. Don't be like that. Don't be that person, because you're not going to come back. Because I do that all the time on YouTube. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go watch what they're talking about, and then I'll be back to this. And then I never watch that channel again. So don't do that to me. Instead, what you do is you wait till the end and then you watch. And at the end, there was a point where I told Nick that if he decides to jump ship, I completely do respect it. And that's 100% true. I do respect it because I understand that not everybody is in the position to be able to take the risks that I can take when it comes to the way that I deal with people. And sometimes even I get like, why did you do that? But on this one, I can tell you honestly, we're 3 or 4 weeks out from when it happened, and there is not a part of me that regrets that, because I feel like if you have any self-esteem at all, there has to come a point, not only in your career, but also in your life, where you're like, this is what I will put up with, and this is what I won't put up with. And when it comes to the mothership specifically, just to kind of put it in maybe terms people would understand, it would be like, I'm sure most of us have dated somebody that's really, really hot. Okay, some of you haven't, but most of us have dated somebody that's really, really hot. And all of our friends are like, how did you land that? How'd this end up happening? And you're just like, because I'm me. But that person is definitely hot. But they've got friends that you hate. And they want you to deal with their friends. And at first you're like, okay, you're hot enough that I can deal with your friends. But then after a while, their friends start really getting on your nerves. And you're cool with some of their friends. So some of their crew is all right. Most of their crew is all right. But let's say their best friends are just obnoxious, and you don't even see a point in why they hang out with these people. You don't understand why these talentless hacks, just playing. I'm just being fun right now. But Seriously, you've been in that position where you've been dating somebody that everybody else you know thinks is hot. And you're like, yeah, but it's just not working out for me. So no matter how hot your friends think that person is, there comes a point where you just have to end it. And maybe the people around you don't understand, because to them on paper, everything should be working the way that it is supposed to work. But for you, it's just not. So then you get to a point where maybe you feel like it's not even about their friends. After a while, it's them that's not treating you the way that you need to be treated. And so then you get like, okay, well, I'm really not into this anymore. And then it gets to a point where you're like, okay, maybe we can just see each other. We'll stop dating. The relationship part is over, but we'll just see each other every once in a while. So then you're in kind of a booty call situation. And then they turn into the booty call that doesn't even come over to your place. They want you to go to their place in the middle of the night at some point where you're like, you know what? I already put the dogs down. I'm in the middle of a project. I'm cleaning. I guess I can throw on some sweats and head over. But then after a while, you get like, well, why am I even doing this? Because really, even though they were super hot in the beginning, now they're just the person you're fucking. That's what it is. And so why at that point would you want to continue? And that's the point that I got to with the mothership. And so I still admit, looking at them, they're still hot. They are, but they're just not for me. And that's something I was okay with. And the truth about my situation with the mothership also is I held on to the video because I recorded it while I was still feeling it that way. I think it was like 2 days after the conversation happened, which sometimes people online I've seen acting like this is what happened with you and the mothership. To tell you the truth, nobody outside of the 3 people that were in that conversation really knows what happened with me and mothership. I know, and then there's 2 other people that know. And there's also one of those people's phones that knows, because they think I don't know that they were recording, but most definitely they were recording. And I don't blame them because they have to do that for legal reasons. To tell you the truth, I would have been recording if the conversation hadn't happened so fast. And I wish I had, because I definitely would play the audio. I don't care if they play the audio. Actually, I wish they would play the audio, because I think everybody would be like, wow, you really told him. Because I did. Like, when people don't understand, when I've had enough, I don't care who you are. I don't care who you think you are. I'm going to tell you what it is I think of you. And with different people, it does take me different amounts of time, because sometimes I'm like, I'm going to give this person the benefit of the doubt. But in this particular situation, there were only 3 of us that were there when it happened. And basically what they asked for was my discretion. And there was a part of me that was angry enough in the moment that I was like, look, I'm going to do what I'm going to do anyway. But I went ahead and left. And like I said, maybe a day or 2 later, I recorded my actual video that I ended up posting as the first part, which I still haven't released the entirety of. And I don't know if I'm going to, because the other thing people have to know about me is I don't really obsess on things. So even though for some people it looks like he's just talking about this and talking about this, no, I actually recorded it at one point. And then things will get on my nerves and I'm like, okay, I'll release this part of it. And then I'll release this part of it. So basically people are screwing themselves is what it comes down to. Because when people get on my nerves, I'm like, oh yeah, there's another part of that I can release. And I'll tell the actual story, because unlike the other side, I do not care. They have to worry about what they're saying because they've got a reputation. My reputation has been shot for a long time. And when people say, like, you know, what about your career? You're ruining your career. I ruined my career at least 10 years ago. Let's be clear about that. So when people talk about me ruining my career, a little late. You should have caught up with me back in 2012, 12 years ago. 2012 probably would have been a time when somebody could have stepped in and been like, you know, some of these moves you're making right now. But even on that, some of my biggest scandals have come from the most innocent part of me and not really understanding that some people have feelings that I just don't have. And maybe you could say that's a character flaw, but I feel like I'm a happier person for it because I'm not walking around with all the feelings that other people are. There are people that to this day will try to get in my way in the career way, where I personally don't have any hard feelings towards them anymore. And even when they do those kinds of things, I just feel bad for them. I feel like, really, you're still holding on to that more than 10 years later? You're still upset about something that I said on Facebook that wasn't even that big of a deal. Like, a lot of my stuff for me on social media is kind of throwaway. But again, to get back to the point, when it came to that situation, I recorded it like 2 days later, and they had asked for my discretion. And as I was thinking about it, I was like, you know what? I'm going to see how they play this. And I'll go ahead and be discreet for as long as they're discreet. And then I ended up seeing one of the door guys from their club at a spot. And they were like really standoffish with me. But I didn't mind that because I don't really care about people enough to, and again, some people don't get that part of me, but I really don't care about people that much. It's just what it is. I don't wish it was any different. I'm happy with it the way it is, but I don't really care about people that much. So at first I was just like, okay, well, whatever. People have a right to feel however they feel. I didn't know what they had heard. But then they tell me that the mothership had sent a text message to all the door guys, a group text message, because they have a group for everything. It's not like they created this group for me. There's ways or things that they need to communicate about. And so they had told me that the mothership had sent a message to all the door guys letting them know that I was no longer to be at the club. Which to me, one, that's not discretion. And two, if you felt like I was upset enough that I was going to do anything about it, because I can say whatever I want on this podcast or when I'm recording at home. But the fact of the matter is, I get it if you don't know me and you think that I might go back in a retaliatory sense, which I would just say, go back and go postal on people. Let's say that that's what you're worried about. The security at the mothership is so good that you could have just sent that message to the security and then I never would have gotten through. But when you send it to the door guys, that's you being messy because you just kind of wanted to get it out there and let them know. And I know who's responsible for that. And again, I don't care enough to be mad at that person. But once you do something like that, then I do have to put my side of the story out. And that's what I built a platform for. And it got 30,000 views, which isn't a lot, but at the same time isn't nothing either. And so plenty of people got to hear that, and different people have different opinions, and people will say things online that are just, they let you know exactly how clueless people are. Because like I've already told you guys, when it comes down to it, if I weren't doing well at the mothership, I would just say that. And to tell you the truth, I never would have wanted to have a conversation with them in the first place, because in my head, I would have been like, you know what? I just need to do better there. It's not about them. It's not about it not being a fair system. It's just about the fact that I am not doing what I need to do on that stage. Like I told you guys, even if I was the kind of person that would hit up bookers, I definitely would not hit up Nat Robichevsky and Chris and be like, hey, have me headline Alamo Drafthouse, because I know how I do there. And I know that I'm not going to give them a headlining set. And I don't even think they've had me headline well, no, the last time they did have me headline. And the funniest thing that happened was there was a point where I was doing a particular joke and I was blaming a particular group of people, and one of the producers of that show happens to be part of that particular group of people. And the sound went off in the middle of that joke. And so I got to blame the producer and say, so your people really do run show business. And the audience really loved it. And then a few seconds later, there was like a glitch in their complete system. Like even the lights went out at a different point. And none of this was planned. They were scrambling. They were trying to fix it. But I was yelling at them with no mic, and the audience was loving it. And it really was like fun at that point. But that was literally the best part of my set. And so when people are online and they're like, well, you just didn't do well enough. It's like, no, actually, I was doing really well there. The truth about that club is Joe really did design a kill box. That's what it is. It really is designed where if you're a comic that's at all competent, which is not a slight against the people that I've already said aren't good there, but it kind of is. If everything's stacked in your favor and you still don't do well, what's going on? Is that really me that's the problem? Because I literally kill it every time that I'm there. Like there's killing it or really killing it. That's what happens for me there. And the other thing is, I've wanted to pivot when it comes to what I talk about on my YouTube channel anyway. Not completely pivot and not completely stray, because if you're familiar with my channel, a lot of times I talk about LGBT issues. And I do have a lot of fun talking about that. But at this point in my life, I would say I'm more of a comic than I am a member of the LGBT community. Because stand-up is just something that I've done for 21 years now. If you're familiar with the way being a stand-up works, if you're really doing it and not just a hobbyist, because there are hobbyists, and shout out to the hobbyists, but if you're really doing it, it's all consuming. And so you don't have a life outside of it that much. You know, there have been times where I've been dating people, or there was a point where I was engaged, and then I kind of got a little bit more into that life, but I still was really heavy in comedy. It's just something that I've always been super dedicated to. And the people that I've dated will tell you that that's been a real problem for us, because they want me to go to birthdays and family events and Christmas and Thanksgiving and all that stuff. And I'm like, I've got sets, or I'm going to be out of town. I'm like, there was one relationship that I was in where I was on the road so much because he wasn't making money, but I was on the road so much that really it was hard for us to get in a rhythm. And at one point he pointed that out and was like, you know, if you just didn't go on the road so much, maybe we could actually get in a rhythm together. And I was like, if I didn't go on the road so much, we'd be broke. And he got mad at me and thought I was trying to slight him. And really I wasn't, but that was just the reality of it. And I have to admit, I had just come off the road when he said that. And I felt like I'm tired enough, because I've already told you guys, I've been very honest with anybody that ever pays attention to my channel in the fact that I have been doing true road comedy. I haven't been doing the cushy spots in the A rooms. That just hasn't been the way that my career has gone. And I don't hold anybody responsible for that. I know the factors that have led to that. I know that in the industry, a lot of people have told me how much they love me. Any manager, agent, any person in the industry that you would think of that is worth anything has at least talked to me at some point. And a lot of times what I get told by these people is, you are really great, you are really funny, but I just don't know how I would sell you. Because the way that the industry looks at things is, if you're Mexican, then you should talk about Mexican things. Or if you want to be more broad about it, if you're Latino, then you should talk about Latino things. If you're gay, then you should talk about gay things. And then when it comes to gay, it's even more specific, because there's a particular way that you should talk about gay things. And I just cannot force myself to talk about things in a way that's anything other than what's genuine to me and genuine to my experience. And a lot of people don't understand that, but it's also made it so, if you go back and look at or listen to my first album, which is also the only album I put out, it was from 2012. I'll put a link in the description if you want to buy it. Don't be cheap and go to Spotify. But if you're cheap, you can do that. I think it's still on Spotify, but I prefer you not. And for some reason, you can use it on Instagram. Like, it's in the music and Instagram. The tracks are in it. Yeah, individually. Search my name, Ty Rivera, when you're on Instagram stories, and you will find there's Airport Suck. There's a couple. Yeah. And so, so the thing is, like, if you listen to my material from then, with the exception of maybe one or two jokes, everything can be told now. And that's because I have been living this life for so long, like me as being a gay man, and the way I lived it before I started being a comic was so in it and really what it is that I'm just, as far as the general public goes, ahead of my time. And so right now, it's almost like I want to move on from what I'm doing, but I know I need to record either an album or a special before I move on from what I'm doing, because when I move on to the next stuff, it's going to be even further ahead of where we are now. Like, I kind of stunt myself in some ways right now just because I know that people aren't ready for the stuff that I want to talk about next and where I actually want to go. But everything's very genuine. And so when you get like older gay people like myself, you know, which I know I'm not super old, but I am old enough that, like, when you get people that are within my age range, they're like, yeah, you're really telling it like it is. You know, it's like Gen Z and millennials, they get super sensitive, but Gen Z, shout out to Gen Z, because a lot of Gen Z is great. Like, when it comes down to it, people talk like, you know, the younger generation is just terrible. Millennials were terrible. And even they've learned to chill out a little bit because they realize that you just can't go after every cause. And some things can just be jokes. And sometimes people can just be silly. And that's why cancel culture has really started to be on the decline, because, except for Kim Congdon. But, all right, I'll stop, all right? I'm just having fun. Can I not have fun, you guys? Why do you guys hate fun so much? That's what I want to know. Don't worry about Kim Congdon. Kim Congdon is fine. Kim Congdon is the best comic I've ever seen, to tell you the truth. I lied about everything. She doesn't even read off her phone during her sets. I just said that. Sarah Weinshank is a comedic genius. There, I said it. It's out. I'm done playing this role. I'm done playing this character I've been playing. All right. Let me get back on track. But Gen Z really does get it. Gen Z has a good sense of humor. I really do appreciate that part of the future. And I don't just say that because I've dated a few of them. Like, it's not just because of that I feel that way. Well, you know, every once in a while when you've got a young spirit, a 23 or a 24-year-old will be attracted to you. And if it's the right night on Grindr, you might be like, okay, let's try this out. see how it works. And then before you know it, you get to know their personality and you realize that they didn't watch the same cartoons as you. And then you don't want to date them. But my point is, like, things are getting better, but at the same time, there always has been this expectation by the industry for me to be a particular thing or be a particular thing in a particular way. And a lot of people don't understand how much that can affect your career if you want to do anything that's kind of in the mainstream. Like, and so there's that. But now there's this avenue that's been around for a while, but for a while, I could see why the industry felt the way that they felt, because even I would think about, like, well, how am I marketing myself? And so I do see, and so my point with the industry is I can see their point at the same time, because if they've got me, who's kind of hard to figure out, and then they've got somebody that's already a package that they can sell that maybe isn't as funny, but will still sell, then of course they're going to go for the easier thing, because that's already pretty much packaged the way they need it to be what it is they need to do and get them on the road to making money and do all the stuff that they wanted them to do. And a lot of those people are also a lot more malleable because they are less talented, which I discussed on the last episode. And people think I'm being bitter or I'm being rude when I'm saying that, but there is a certain malleability that comes with when you know that you really should just go with the program, and that that's probably the only way it'll work for you. Where a person like me is a little more comfortable being like, okay, maybe I'll make less money, but I have to just be me because I know that there is value in what I do. And with the way that social media works now, I can figure that out for myself and figure out the marketing of it. And so again, that's where it came down to like my situation with Mothership just not being good for me, because there were times that I wanted to talk about things that were comedy related. But since there is a chance that Dave Chappelle will drop in, or some of the comedians that I'll end up talking about when I want to talk about comedy related content, or when I want to do comedy related content, then that will put the Mothership in an awkward spot, because the bigger comic will be like, I don't feel comfortable with this guy being here because he basically ripped me on social media. And if you think comedians aren't that petty, then you clearly haven't been paying attention to my situation with Kim Congdon. All right, last time I'm mentioning her, but my point is, I'm being silly, but comedians are very petty in some cases. So if they feel like you've said something bad about them on the internet, they're not going to be excited about seeing you at the club. And so there were times when I wanted to do content, but I would be like, you know, I probably shouldn't talk about that because that could create some sort of situation for me at the club or for the club. So then I started not putting out content for a little while because a lot of the stuff I wanted to talk about was related. And then there's some people that were like, you just saw the Cat Williams thing, so you decided to do your own clout chase because Cat Williams said whatever. To tell you the truth, Cat Williams did kind of spur me in a way, but it's not in the way that most people would think. What happened with the Cat Williams situation is he said something about Joe Rogan when he said Joe Rogan has 6 comedians that he's trying to put on that are never going to be funny. And I, because I was working for the club, kind of went into a slightly defensive mode. And I was like, actually, Joe puts on a lot of us, and he doesn't have us on specialty shows like a lot of the clubs do. Because if you're not familiar, at a lot of clubs from LA, which is where I started and the bulk of my learning comedy happened, and actually the bulk of my comedy career happened in LA, because I was in LA for 14 years. I was in Vegas for 4. I was in Phoenix for 1 in between. And now I've been in Austin. And so like the bulk of my career happened in LA. And in LA, a lot of times the way the clubs work is they have like the LGBT night. And then they have like, you know, Crack 'em Up Thursdays, which is the black show, Trippin' on Tuesdays, which is also a black show, Refried Fridays, which is obviously a Latino show. I mean, these are actual show titles that they have in LA. And that's the way it worked a lot of times, was you would get put on a show that had other people that were from your same group. And so I wanted to say that about Joe, but then like I thought about it and I was like, wait a second. I haven't really been working that much at the Mothership lately. And then I got like, why is that? And at first it did make sense because I was like, there's other comics coming in from town. And I have to tell you, when there are weeks when Ari Shaffir is in town, Mark Norman, there was one week when Ari Shaffir was in town, Mark Norman, Shane Gillis, I can't even remember. Big J was here. Also Dan Soder, I think, was at the same time. Like all of them were here at the same time. And when that's happening and I don't get any spots, I have no feelings about that because they're all great comics and it makes sense and they're huge. And that looks great also on the social media when people are seeing like all of these people are in town. So when it's times like that, I definitely do get it. It's not a thing for me. But then when you have me sitting it out for the B Squad, and at this point, I'm not being catty or like talking about anyone in particular, but it's just, that's what it was at that point. So when you have me sitting it out for the B Squad, and it's like on a comedic level, I'm barely below what they consider the A Squad. And that's only because I don't have the same name recognition. But as far as being able to be on a show with them and follow them or go up right before them, nobody would ever notice anything. Nobody, as far as the audience go, would be like, this guy is an amateur and they're clearly the pros. Everybody would know that it makes sense that we would be on the same show. Technically, what would happen on things like that, because you guys forget, Tim Dillon, Gabriel Iglesias, Joe Coy, all these people have had me on shows with them. Nobody's ever felt like I've been out of place. Technically, what happens is the clubs that I do will get a lot of messages on their social media with people asking what my name was again. Like, that's the reality of my situation. And so, like I was saying, so I started thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, that doesn't really seem to make sense that I'm having to sit it out more often than not right now when I'm doing as well as I am. And so I didn't feel like I could make that video for my own, like, just because I was like, that's not the reality of the situation. Right now, I'm not being used at the club right now like that. And then there are other people that I think are very funny on this scene. And I feel almost like I shouldn't mention their names because I don't want anybody to think that they were in my ear. I've been talking to them about this and they have bitter feelings towards Mothership, and now I'm relaying it for them. So that's the only reason I won't mention their names. But if you're on the Austin scene, you know that there are people here locally that aren't getting on at the Mothership that really do deserve to be there, that are good enough to be there, but they're not getting the opportunities, again, because of the B Squad and because those are personal friends of either Adam or Tony. And so then I found myself in a position where it's like, okay, if I make this video, am I basically at this point towing the company line? Because that's what it would feel like I'm doing, is I'm kind of carrying water for that club when really that club isn't treating me the way that I should be treated. So why would I do that? Am I now a propaganda channel? Because that's what I would feel like if that's what I was doing and that wasn't genuinely what was happening. And yeah, maybe that would have got me a couple more spots at the show or on the shows. But is that the way that I want to get more spots? Is because I'll say the things that they want me to say? My whole career has been me not saying what people have wanted me to say. So why now would I suddenly change that to what I'm going to be? And then there were times where I felt critical of things that Joe Rogan had said on his podcast. And for me, like I said, I don't feel any personal feelings about that. Like, I didn't think like Joe Rogan is a terrible person for what he's saying on his podcast right now. I'm not even talking about like comedy related stuff to the Mothership things that he said, but just things that I didn't really agree with. And I wanted to make content about it. And it's like, I can't make content about that because then it looks like I'm slamming Joe Rogan. And so it's like, if you think about it, Joe Rogan, Dave Chappelle, like if I make the biggest comics in the world perform at the Mothership. So I'm not allowed to do any content about those people because it could reflect badly on the club. And my whole world is not dependent on sacred cows. And suddenly now there's sacred cows everywhere. And I start to feel like, where am I? India? Because that's the only place cows are really sacred. I don't live in India. I live in Austin, Texas. And here they're not even cows, they're cattle. And you know what happens to cattle? It gets slaughtered. That's what happens. So I didn't move to fucking Austin, Texas to treat cattle like cows. It's just not what it is. But it's true. You know, it's true. It's what it is. So I started getting like, okay, so I basically am wearing a straitjacket right now as far as content goes for a club that's really not giving me any spots anyway. So let me go talk to them and see if I can figure this out. And then they're not even open to a conversation. So then I try to get word to Joe Rogan himself, because I personally do not have contact with Joe Rogan. I don't have his phone number. We don't follow each other on social media. There's no way I can get a hold of him. So I send a couple messages through some very trusted friends of mine that know him really well. He does not get back to me. So then at that point, I have no choice but to think that you must be okay with everything that's going on because you've been at least briefed about the situation. And I had no interest in being on his podcast. None of this was me trying to get on his podcast. I think a better way of me getting on his podcast would be like some of the times when I was hanging out with Brian Simpson, if I had chosen to stay in the green room when Joe Rogan would come in the green room. But I would choose to leave the green room because one time I was in there when Joe was in there, and he, like, in all fairness to Joe, every time I would see him, he would give me a handshake and the bro hug every time I saw him. So it's not like he was completely cold with me or he made me feel any kind of way. But the time that I was in there, well, there were actually 2 times that we were in the green room at the same time. And both times I kind of felt like, what am I doing here? Like, I don't really know him like that. We're not friends that way. And I've never been the groupie type or the clout chaser. So there's no reason for me to be there in that way either. So why am I here? So when I would hear that he was going to be, sorry guys, live performance is happening right now. We're in the middle of South by Southwest. If you have a problem with it, some people have mentioned, just, I'm not going to be rude and tell you to go somewhere else because really I need these clicks. And we're in the money-making phase of this podcast. When you do longer content, they can put more ads on it, you make more money. So this is not the time for me to tell you to get lost. This is where I put on my customer service hat and tell you guys, I'm sorry about the interruption. But what I was saying was, I didn't feel comfortable just hanging out for no reason and making small talk or whatever it is I would do at that point. So I would just make it a point not to be there when Joe was going to be in the green room. And so that would have been the way for me to get on the podcast, though. This way, I did not want to get on the podcast at all. Technically, between me, you, and the rats, what I will tell you is that there were a few things that I wanted to talk to Joe Rogan about the way that the club was running. And I understand he's a very busy man, and this is when he was dealing with the Spotify situation, which you ended up seeing on different reports that was like a deal worth over $200 million. This was like right after that. So who knows? He might have been celebrating, or he might have been dealing with the legal end of that still, or whatever he might have been doing. I don't know. I can just guess. But I would think that if a comic like me, because even though some of you may think of me as just this guy that's gossiping online or whatever, the truth is my reputation in the industry when it comes to me dealing with people is not bad. I joke about the way it is, but most people know that I'm respectful, and most people know that if I hit you up, it's probably not just going to be about bullshit. Because one, I don't like being on the phone anyway. I'm not a person who's calling people all the time. I'm not a person who goes to lunch with people. Usually when people ask me to go to lunch, especially if it's a business way, one of my friends told me this. His name's Charlie. I can't remember Charlie's last name. It's not Charlie Sotelo from South by Southwest. He's got some name that I can't even pronounce, but he was a pretty big guy in Hollywood. I don't know if he's still... I'd imagine he's still doing something in the industry. Last time he had me come in for some kind of audition for a game show, which I'm probably not even going to be a game show host, but he asked me to, and I did it because I like Charlie. But one time Charlie told me, he was like, I never ask anybody to go to lunch because nothing happens at lunch. If you want to meet with somebody, you go meet with them in their office, and that's where you talk about things, because you're away from everybody. It's quiet. You don't have the interruption of what you're going to order. I don't care what you eat. Like, let's talk business. And so my thing was, I wanted to talk to Joe on the phone, one-on-one, and tell him some of the stuff that's going on. And I wasn't going to be a snitch, but at the same time, I was going to be like, look, these are some things that seem to be a little bit off. But maybe he didn't want to hear that. And I'm not going to put myself down at this point and be like, well, why would Joe Rogan want to talk to me? Because I'm really good at what I do. And because I really do care about the Austin scene. And because I really did like his club. And I really do think it can be everything that he says it's supposed to be. But just right now, it's not living up. And I don't know why people online get so mad at me saying that and then say that I'm bitter. It's like, if I was bitter, I would say the club isn't shit. I would say nobody at that club is shit. I would say there was nothing good about that club in the whole time that I was there, and I was miserable the whole time I was there. But I don't say any of that. I just tell you guys, just like, if you're going to be an honest friend with somebody, you've got to tell them about some of their flaws too. Like, and yeah, you find a nice way to put it. You don't have to just tell them outright that, it's not that dress making you fat. Technically, you look fat in the dress you were wearing last week. I would stop blaming the dresses and get on a treadmill is what I would do. You don't say it like that. But, you know, you might be like, hey, maybe pants. And not skinny jeans. You're fat. They're all going to fit like skinny jeans. All right. Seriously, though. I would just like seriously tell him, hey, these are the things. And I wasn't looking to get on the podcast. There's really no podcast I want to be on except my own. And even that, who knows how long that'll hold out. When producer Justin gets tired of being here on what is this? I shouldn't tell you that because if somebody wants to come down and storm me at an undisclosed time.
I'm bleeping all these.
Yeah, take out what, use your judgment. All right. But yeah, when producer Justin gets tired of being here and sitting in for this, then I'll stop doing it. And I will probably have a guest next week, but everybody is afraid of me right now. And they're not afraid of me, they're just afraid of the association because Leonarda got banned from the mothership. And there's no reason that she should have been banned from the mothership other than the fact that she hangs out with me. She shared one of my videos and it was... I wish people would stop doing that, like making a big deal about videos, because one, I think you need to get a life if you're going through other people's likes to see who's liking the video. And that's just really the way I feel about it. And two, sometimes people are not liking a video or sharing it because they agree with everything that person said. Sometimes people just like my brand of silly and they're liking it because of that. I'll tell you the truth about me and videos. Sometimes I don't even have the volume up and I don't even read anything. I just see one of my friends posted it and I like it without even paying attention to the content. And sometimes if I'm trying to look at something else or I need to like return a message on Instagram, I won't even look at their video later. I'll just like it in the moment and then I'll go on to whatever it is I actually have to do. And it's just, at that point, it's really just a way of me saying hi and hopefully boosting the algorithm for them a little bit. Because I know that that's the way social media works, is you boost the algorithm when you like things or when you comment on them. So there's plenty of people that do that with me too. I know because like anytime you do something, there's a good chance that a lot of other people do the exact same thing. As much as we would all like to think that we're individuals and so original, the truth is there's probably a lot of people that think the way you do, in especially the most basic ways like that, like how we deal with social media. And so it's really unfair to punish people for sharing something or for liking something. And as far as everything else goes, you know, people can just in general kind of fuck off and feel however they feel about whatever it is they feel. But that's as honest as I can be about this whole situation. And if you want to know why I would record a podcast by myself and why I like recording the podcast is because we don't have any kind of agreement specifically between me and producer Justin, but he kind of handles the editing part of it. And then I add a couple little things here and there, but I don't heavily edit these. And sometimes in conversations like this, even if it's a conversation with myself, I do feel like if it's better if it's unedited. If you guys just see it the way it is without me doing jump cuts and cutting all the breaths out in between like I do on my regular videos and just saying, this is it with the warts. So like some things you may watch on this episode and you might be like, this is an inconsistency here. And he said this here and this is like this. Welcome to me being a human. Everybody does shit like that. Maybe record yourself for an hour and see how consistent you are throughout the entire thing. But I still appreciate you guys watching, and next week we probably will have a guest. Thank you again. This has been Slumber Party.